Chapter 5. The identical seventh day. Differ as men may regarding the identity of the Sabbath today, there can be no difference of opinion regarding this fact. The seventh day of the creative week was set apart from the other days, a distinction being made between it and the other days, and it was declared to be the blessed, holy rest day of the Creator. This is the record: thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. Genesis 2:1-3. If the seventh day has been lost since that time, it was not lost then. It was the last day of the week, the seventh. The claim is now made that this identical seventh day of creation cannot be located. We are informed that to attempt to identify it now would prove a hopeless task, altogether impossible. The reason for this is said to be the confusion that has come in as a result of many changes in calendars between that time and this, the entire absence of any calendar at all in primitive times, and the failure to keep any accurate account of the times the earth has rotated on its axis through the centuries. These are the reasons, so we are told, that make the task of finding the seventh day at this late period in the world's history an altogether insurmountable one. If men really desire, however, to find the seventh day, it can be done. It is not such a task as it is presumed to be. If there is a genuine desire to know the truth, there is always a way to discover it. God keeps accurate record. God did not leave this matter of an accurate keeping of records entirely in the hands of men. Their methods of reckoning the passing of time, their counting of the days, their calendars and almanacs, need not be taken as our sole reliance in identifying the seventh day. God has a way of taking care of his own institutions and ordinances, as well as his own people, upon which we are safe to place full reliance. There surely can be no question that God attached very great importance to the observance of the seventh day Sabbath. He descended from heaven on Mount Sinai, and in the hearing of perhaps 3 million people spoke the words of the Ten Commandment law. Among the audible words from his lips were these: "The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, in it thou shalt not do any work." Exodus 20:10. God attached a very definite and solemn penalty to the violation of this law. He has declared the transgression of the law to be sin. "Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law." 1 John 3:4. Sin is declared to be punishable by death. The wages of sin is death. Romans 6:23. Thus it can be clearly seen that it was of supreme importance to know which was the seventh day. Not to know was to be in danger of violating the law of God. Thus would be incurred the penalty of death. The days of creation. The days of the Bible are the same as the days we are familiar with, composed of a dark part called evening, or night, and a light part called morning, or day. The days of creation were not long periods of time, as many erroneously suppose, but covered the same length of time as our present days, an evening and a morning, or a dark part and a light part, as the earth revolved on its axis. This will be seen by the divine record. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Genesis 1:3-5. Plainly, this was a literal day, with its evening and its morning, its dark part first and then the light part. As the record of the creation week continues, the work of each day closes with the statement: "The evening and the morning were the second day, the evening and the morning were the third day, the evening and the morning were the fourth day, the evening and the morning were the fifth day, the evening and the morning were the sixth day." Genesis 1:8, 13, 19, 23, 31. Literal days. No other language could have been chosen by the inspired writer that would have made the thought of God more explicit than do these words. There are no other terms to be found in the Hebrew language that will express the idea of literal days more forcefully than the words here employed. There was a first day, a second day, a third day, and on to the seventh day. Each of these days opened and closed with a definite, literal evening and morning. The literal rendering of the Hebrew is, there was evening, there was morning, day 1, there was evening, there was morning, day 2, and so on. There is every reason to believe that the inspired penman of these words, Moses, the man of God, understood these days to mean, and intended his readers to understand them to mean, literal days. He certainly never had in mind anything similar to the ideas suggested by modern evolutionistic geology. When Jehovah came down on Mount Sinai to give his law, he referred to these days of creation as literal days, and intended the people so to understand them. The reason he gave for remembering the Sabbath day was that in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. No unbiased mind can read these words and reach any conclusion other than that the 6 days, as well as the 7th, were literal days. Nor is there any reason for seeking any other meaning. If God created the world, why could He not create it in 6 days? Why should He require a longer time than that to speak matter into existence? We are not grateful to those who, in order to relieve the record of seeming difficulties, have invented the purely theoretical and altogether visionary explanation of mighty periods of time. Such an explanation involves far more numerous and vastly more serious difficulties than those it seeks to avoid. We refuse to risk everything and gain nothing by forsaking the simple and natural and true interpretation of the scriptural record of creation. These, then, were real days, just as we know days now, not long ages, as evolutionists maintain. Can the original 7th day be found now? Then on the 7th day of the creative week, God did something different. On that day He rested from you all His work which He had made. Then, because He had rested on the 7th day, God blessed the 7th day, and sanctified it. See Genesis 2, 1-3. The question raised is, can that blessed, holy, original rest day of the Creator now be found and located? There can be no doubt that it was given to mankind as a Sabbath, that it was indeed the Sabbath at that time, that God designed its observance by men to bring to them a blessing and to be a means of grace. But can it now be found? Is it possible, through all the passing centuries and in spite of finite and changing calendars, positively to identify the original 7th day beyond any possibility of doubt? Let this be set down at once and forever: God has not forgotten His holy day, He has not allowed it to become irrevocably lost, has not permitted its preservation to depend on the fallible reckoning of men, and is fully able to point it out infallibly to all those who are determined to fulfill His will. An institution as old as history. There is an institution that has come down through the ages from the very earliest times to the present. That institution is known as the week. It is a period of time comprising 7 days. It was known among the various nations and tribes of men in the ages of the past. Every other period of time or grouping of the days together is marked by some movement of the heavenly bodies. This is not true of the week. There is no movement of heavenly bodies, of the sun, or moon, or stars, or planets, that determines the length of the week. The year is marked by the time it takes the Earth to complete one circuit of the sun. The month is marked by the revolution of the moon about the Earth. The day is determined by the rotation of the Earth on its axis. But the period of the week is purely arbitrary, that is, there is nothing in nature suggesting such a grouping together of 7 days. No celestial body circles the Earth, or sun, or moon, or stars, or any planet, or is circled by these, in 7 days. The origin of the week. How, then, did the week originate? We will let the Encyclopaedia Britannica reply. The week is a period of 7 days, having no reference whatever to the celestial motions, a circumstance to which it owes its unalterable uniformity. It has been employed from time immemorial in almost all Eastern countries, and as it forms neither an aliquot part of the year nor of the lunar month, those who reject the Mosaic recital will be at a loss, as Delambre remarks, to assign to it an origin having much semblance of probability. 11th edition, Volume 4, p. 988, Art. Calendar. Attention is also directed to the following observations from Thomas Hartwell Home, in an introduction to the critical study and knowledge of the Holy Scriptures. One of the most striking collateral confirmations of the Mosaic history of the creation, is the general adoption of the division of time into weeks, which extends from the Christian states of Europe to the remote shores of Hindustan, and has equally prevailed among the Hebrews, the Egyptians, Chinese, Greeks, Romans, and northern barbarians, nations, some of whom had little or no intercourse with others, and were not even known by name to the Hebrews. Edition of 1825, Volume I, Chap. 3, Seconds 2, Par. 1, p. 163. Dr. Lyman Coleman remarks, 7 has been the ancient and honored number among the nations of the earth. They have measured their time by weeks from the beginning. The original of this was the Sabbath of God, as Moses has given the reasons for it in his writings. Brief dissertations on the first 3 chapters of Genesis, p. 26. Known from the very earliest times. The Presbyterian Board of Publication, in its tract number 271, The Christian Sabbath, presents this. The division of time into weeks is not only non-neutral, but in a sense contraneutral, since the week of 7 days is no subdivision of either the naturally measured month or year. Yet this singular measure of time by periods of 7 days may be traced not only through the sacred history before the era of Moses, but in all ancient civilizations of every era, many of which could not possibly have derived their notion from Moses. Among the learned of Egypt, the Brahmins of India, by Arabs, by Assyrians, as may be gathered from their astronomers and priests, this division was recognized. Hesiod, 900 BC, declares the 7th day is holy. So Homer and Callimachus. Even in the Saxon mythology, the division by weeks is prominent. Nay, even among the tribes of devil worshippers in Africa, we are told that a peculiar feature of their religion is a weekly sacred day, the violation of which by labor will incur the wrath of the devil god. Traces of a similar division of time have been noticed among the Indians of the American continent. Now, on what other theory are these facts explicable than upon the supposition of a divinely ordained Sabbath at the origin of the race? Bound Tracts, Volume 12, pages 5 to 7. 7th day in an interrupted succession. Alexander Campbell, the founder of the denomination known as the Christian Church, in his popular lectures, says this. Heaven left not this fact, the creation, the basis of 1,000 volumes, to be gathered from abstract reasonings, vitiated traditions, ingenious analogies, or plausible conjectures, but from a monumental institution which was as universal as the annals of time, as the birth of nations, and as the languages spoken by mortals. An institution too, which, notwithstanding its demands, not only of the 7th part of all time, but of the 7th day in an interrupted succession, was celebrated from the creation to the deluge, during the deluge, and after the deluge till the giving of the law. Pages 283, 284. The same writer, in his Evidences of Christianity, declares. The 7th day was observed from Abraham's time, nay, from creation. Page 302. The ancient Jewish historian, Josephus, in his book Against Tapion, says. There is not any city of the Grecians, nor any of the barbarians, nor any nation whatsoever, whither our custom of resting on the 7th day hath not come. Book 2, Par. 40, in Works of Flavius Josephus, Winston ed. p. 899. Since the Sabbath was set apart by God on the very first 7th day of earthly time, the period of the week was known from the very beginning. It is also clear that the week was known by Noah at the time of the flood. He stayed yet other 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark, and the dove came in to him in the evening, and, lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off, so Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. Genesis 8, 10-12. Now, what is it that determines in such an arbitrary manner, in the absence of any movement of the celestial bodies, this never-varying period of the week? There is but one answer, and it is this, the never-failing recurrence every 7 days of the Sabbath of the Lord. This 7th day Sabbath has been kept in unbroken succession through all the passing centuries. It was not lost before the days of Christ. It has not been lost since. It is not lost now. Jehovah, its Maker, has preserved it, and pointed it out to men as His Sabbath again and again. More than 2,500 years after creation, God took occasion definitely to point out which was the original seventh day, and pointed it out in such a way that, even if there had been any confusion in the minds of His people before, none could remain when He had completed His identification of His holy day. The record of what He did and how He identified the day, the literal, original seventh day, will be found in the 16th chapter of Exodus. It is the story of the falling of the manna in the wilderness. The identical seventh-day Sabbath has come down to us all the way from Eden. It has never been lost. Identical seventh day pointed out by God. When the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, It is manna, for they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, This is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded, gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man, according to the number of your persons, take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered, some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack, they gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, Let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms, and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass, that on the sixth day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 comers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said, Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And Moses said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord, today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass, that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath, therefore He giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place, let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day, Exodus 16:14-30. Here the identical 7th day is pointed out by God, without reference to the calendars of men and without any need of consulting human records. The Maker of the days, the Creator of the heavenly bodies, the Master of time and eternity, deigns to point out to His fallible, erring creatures which is His day, the identical 7th day of creation. There was no possibility of any mistake about it. No one could truthfully say he could not find the day. It was so plain now that no one could lose it. 3 distinct weekly miracles identified the day. By 3 distinct miracles God identified the 7th day. He gave twice as much manna as usual on the 6th day. He kept that manna unspoiled overnight, whereas on all other nights it spoiled and could not be kept. And on the 7th day, the identical 7th day of creation, God's day, the blessed Sabbath, He withheld all manna from falling. And these 3 miracles were repeated every week, 52 weeks a year, for 40 years, during the wandering of the Israelites in the wilderness. That is, 2,500 years this side of creation. The Lord of the Sabbath Himself took occasion to point out about 2,080 identical 7th days in order that there need be no mistake about the identity of the Sabbath. No, the 7th day Sabbath is not difficult to find. On the contrary, it is impossible to lose. The Israelites have continued to observe that identical day, thus pointed out, through all the passing centuries, without ever since losing it or becoming confused regarding it. That observance has been unbroken from that time to this. They entered into an oath to walk in God's law, especially in respect to Sabbath keeping. They entered into a curse, and into an oath, to walk in God's law, and to observe and do all the commandments of the Lord our Lord, and His judgments and His statutes. And if the people of the land bring ware or any victuals on the Sabbath day to sell, that we would not buy it of them on the Sabbath. Nehemiah 10:29-31. They did not have the Gregorian calendar that we have. They did not need it in order to count 7. At the end of every 7-day period they observed the holy Sabbath. Sabbath not altered by changes in calendars. Calendars have changed, but the week has never been broken from the beginning of time. Regardless of all systems of reckoning time, in spite of changes from one calendar to another, notwithstanding all the inaccuracies of men, the week stretches in unbroken succession back to the very beginning when God called His creation into existence. You cannot lose the Sabbath. Its occurrence and recurrence do not depend on the shifting calculations of men, but on the omnipotent power and omniscient wisdom of the Lord our God. Coming down 4,000 years this side of creation, we once more find the identical seventh day definitely pointed out, this time in the New Testament. It is the occasion of the crucifixion and resurrection of our Lord. This is the record. This man, Joseph of Arimathea, went unto Pilate, and begged the body of Jesus. And he took it down, and wrapped it in linen, and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. And the women also, which came with him from Galilee, followed after, and beheld the sepulchre, and how his body was laid. And they returned, and prepared spices and ointments, and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. Now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre. Luke 23:52-24, 2. Here the day on which the crucifixion took place, which is known to have been Friday, or the 6th day of the week, is given a name, the preparation. The next day, the 7th, the day upon which the Lord of life rested in the tomb, is positively identified as the Sabbath day according to the commandment, the identical 7th day of creation. The next day, the 1st day of the week, upon which our Lord was raised from the dead, is not given a name, either sacred or secular, but is spoken of merely as the 1st day of the week. In this passage, then, 3 days are brought before us, and their relation to one another is clearly revealed. The Sabbath day, even the Sabbath day according to the commandment, is seen, even in the New Testament, to be the day between the 6th day, Friday, and the 1st day, now known as Sunday. That is, Sunday is not, and never has been, the Sabbath of the New Testament. That Sabbath, the true Sabbath of God, the Sabbath day according to the commandment, is the day immediately before Sunday. When Sunday begins, the true Sabbath is past. No possibility of losing the Sabbath. At that very time Sunday was being observed by sun worshippers. Later, through apostasy and departure from God, the observance of Sunday was brought into the church. It was never brought in by divine authority, and its observance is no part of true Christianity. So also at the time the 7th day was observed by the Jews. The 1st day was observed by sun worshippers. Both of these days, the 7th and the 1st, have been kept in unbroken succession ever since, the 7th day by the Jews and Sabbath-keeping Christians, the 1st day by sun worshippers, and later by Sunday-keeping Christians. These 2 days, having been so observed, have come down to us in unbroken line, being kept week after week through all the Christian centuries, without possibility of being lost. Thus we can trace the Sabbath through all the years stretching between creation and now. It has not been lost. There has been no change in it. It is the same Sabbath now as it was when it came from the hand of God. It was made of the 7th day. It is still the 7th day. Again I say, so far from being unable to find the 7th day, the fact is we are unable to lose it. But, it is asked, has not the calendar been changed many times, and have not such changes resulted in changing the Sabbath? This, too, we shall study.